Hello everyone and welcome back. There are so many people that playing video games out there. I used to be one of them. For most of us, it's a great and funny experience. But there are some people who don't agree with that. So grab your flashlight and follow me into the darkness. I should have never started a YouTube gaming channel. I was just looking for a good outlet to have fun and interact with others. But the others weren't exactly what I had in mind. It all started innocuously enough. I finally got myself some equipment good enough to make some gaming footage for YouTube, so I started recording myself playing various indie games. One of the games I first uploaded is called The Binding of Isaac. In this game, the protagonist, Isaac's mother, hears a voice that is willing her to kill her son. Isaac escapes death by his mother through a crawl space on his floor. He ends up in his basement, which resembles the depths of hell. He then has to battle through various enemy types using his tears and power-ups along the way. Anyone who has played enough video games can probably relate to what I am going to talk about now. But there is something very different and unsettling about what happened to me. When you play a game for an inordinate amount of time, the visuals of the game seem to follow with you at the end of the day. I would often finish playing the game and then find the visuals sparking behind my eyelids as I would try to sleep at night. If you watched some of the gameplay, you can imagine the type of dreams I was experiencing. I was okay with these dreams because they were typically fleeting and were obviously a result of my focus on the content. Also, the content is morbid, but silly at the same time. The art style is not lifelike, and the game has a fun and adventurous feeling to it. The past few days, things started getting strange. I would make a video, edit it, and save it. When I would try to view the final product after saving the video, would be blank with lots of static. I tried isolating some of the video sounds, but the static was just too much. I may be crazy, but I definitely heard faint voices among the static, but I couldn't find anything definitive. I chalked this up to a software issue. When I would resave the video, it would format correctly. The only time before last night that I got freaked out was when I stayed up late working on the Escapists indie video game. I finished editing the video and saved it to the videos folder file I usually do. I went in and opened the video, but to my surprise, it wasn't the Escapists. It was Binding of Isaac footage. I watched the cartoonesque images start to transition into lifelike settings, and suddenly it felt familiar. It was my dream from the night before. The video was a point-of-view perspective of me opening a closet in the corner of a cement basement. I opened the door and suddenly I'm looking at a huge creature huddled in the corner of the closet. It was pale flesh with long thinning black and white hair all over its body. Its head it turned away and pressed up against the wall. In the video, you see me backing up, and as I start to close the door, the creature turns its head towards me and it reveals its blood-soaked lips. The creature's head cocks to the side as its black eyes filled with bright light that started to illuminate the walls of the closet. In the dream, I remember turning around and running, but the video showed the creature's lips peeling back. Next thing I know, I'm waking up at my computer desk. The rays of sunshine escaping through my blinds jolted me back to reality. Did I really just dreamt about this? That sentence confuses even me, but it felt so real. This is when I started to question what I was doing with my free time. After this equally scary and odd occurrence, I took a break from playing and recording. I had plenty of footage saved to upload, so I spent the next few days reading and writing. I just needed to calm my brain down. At this point, the eerie dream had almost escaped my memory. After kissing my fiancé Jerry goodbye, before she went to work the night shift at her job, I went to bed. I believe I fell asleep around 9:30 p.m. I remember waking up to the sound of talking, coming from my computer room. My eyes opened and focused on the giant digital numbers on my alarm clock, blinking. I grabbed my phone and saw that the time was 12:47 a.m. At this time, the sounds of a keyboard clicking was drilling into my head. Annoyed, I sat up, and when the realization that someone was in the other room on my computer, I froze in fear. I have a cat, but the typing noise was discernibly that of a human's. Could my fiancé have skipped out at work? I then heard a growling, hissing, "Yes," sound echoing through the darkness of my room. This sent an avalanche of chills down my spine that settled in my stomach like a jar of dead butterflies. The memories of the dream started to creep into my psyche. The rational part of my brain started trying to rationalize what was happening. It's probably Jerry. Or maybe you just left the computer on and the cat jumped up and started some video you were watching before bed. Maybe you're just half asleep and are imagining things. That growling yes noise was probably just the cat hissing at something he saw at the window. I sat listening to the tapping noise in the claustrophobic warmth of my room while letting these thoughts pour through my head until I decided to text Jerry. I asked if she stayed home. About 2 minutes later, a text came in that said she was at work. I texted her back saying I just had a bad dream and not to worry. I mustered up the courage to see what was making the typing noise, so I sat up abruptly, causing the bed mattress to creak and the headboard to rattle against the wall. In this very instant, the typing noise stopped and I heard what sounded like my computer chair swing around. This had a distinct sound because the bearings had been going out of the swivel for a long time. I rationalized this by thinking my cat must have sprung from the chair after it was startled. I made my way into the living room in view of the computer room. There was monitor light leaking into the hallway from the partially open door of my computer room. I noticed at this time that I was hardly breathing, so I forced myself to take a few breaths. I thought to myself, "Get a grip, Eric. It's nothing, you idiot." I laughed a little at my paranoia and made a hasty approach to the door. I just wanted to get in there and see what the hell was freaking me out so much for no reason. Just as I reached out to push the door open, it slammed shut in my face. I stood there stunned and confused. Then, that eerie feeling of "you need to get the fuck out of here right now" set in. I slowly cowered away from the door while never taking my eyes off the handle. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to yell out, but I could not. My back finally came to rest on a wall adjustment from the shut door of the computer room. My brain frantically tried to make sense of these events until it finally came to rest on the wind. "It's just the fucking wind, you dolt," I told myself. The air pressure differences close doors all the time when the windows are open. It's okay. It's just a coincidence. I made my way again towards the door with my newfound certainty, but my bones were moving my flesh along at a much slower pace. I was probably blue at this point because I don't remember breathing since the door slammed in my face. I reached my arm out and grabbed the door handle. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I swung the door open and peeked inside while standing behind the pseudo cover of the door's frame. The computer chair was facing the door, and I could see that my video editing software was queued up on the monitor. At this point, I took the biggest breath of my life and almost started to laugh, when suddenly I felt something rub against my leg and almost did a backflip out of the room. I almost took off running, but then I came to find out it was my cat. He followed me in after I opened the door. "You bastard cat." At this point, I could not take much more. I was emotionally drained. I went and sat down at my desk. The keyboard looked as if my cat was using it. The editing software was blank, so I closed it out and was about to shut down the computer until I saw a video file in the top right corner of the monitor. I did not remember saving a video there. I hesitated for a few seconds, and then I double-clicked the file. Today, I have uploaded a short clip, unedited. The video shows a few moments prior to me opening the door to the computer room. The chair seems to be moving slightly. I do not know how to explain what you are hearing before I enter the room. There is some audible noises that have freaked me out. The best transcript I could make is, "Isaac? Yes, you caught me. Caught me. You caught me. My teeth are sharpened. No. God? Back home." You then see me open the door, sit down, discover the video, and then shut the webcam off. My question for you all is, what the hell? Could my cat have simply triggered my webcam? Or am I being pranked of my fiancé? I asked her about it, and she denies any responsibility. There is a part of me that feels whatever it was in the room last night wanted to record me, almost like it's playing a game. Can we play a game? Which one? Minecraft or the one we got at the garage sale? Oh, that game. The one with the badly drawn trees on the cover that was hanging out in the free bin at the end of the sale. Today was supposed to be a fun Father-Son day, while Megan was having a girls' day out. But a boring game is better than one of Peter's tantrums, so I popped the CD in. And waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, the scene loaded, but it wasn't pretty. We were standing in the middle of what appeared to be a forest. The trees, which were identical clones of each other, had leaves that stuck together in big, stiff clumps. A low-resolution dirt texture was mapped to the ground, and the render distance was terrible. Beyond a few steps, it was all just black. And then, the webcam light went on. Was it some kind of virtual reality game, where it was recording our movements or something? Either way, I didn't really want the camera recording us, and suddenly it blinked off. I shrugged and turned to Peter. "Where should we go first?" Right. I jiggled the mouse so we were facing right and pressed W. We walked through the virtual forest, but as the minutes went by, everything stayed the same. The same weird trees, the same dirt, and even the same rocks. 2 small ones and a big one in a cluster that went by every 10 seconds. I was starting to get bored when the dirt fell away and the world beyond was a pitch black. "Oops, the game broke, buddy." "No, it didn't," he said, grabbing the computer from me. He marched the character forward, and as the trees faded back into view, I realized we had just been standing on top of a really big hill. Hey, it's like the woods behind our house. You know, when we go down the hill, and then there's the stream and the boulder? You mean the Bat Rock? Peter, don't call it that. That boulder has been there for hundreds of years, It's a relic that reminds us of how time is fleeting but it looks like a butt. I groaned and took the computer back. I could only see a few steps ahead of me as I stumbled down the hill, but slowly the trees started to thin a bit and the ground began to level out. And then I saw it, a stream snaking across my path, and behind it, the vague outline of something large and round. I mashed down on the W key. The scene bounced as my character jogged toward. Peter was squealing with delight, but I wasn't listening because I knew. I stopped, and there it was, a large boulder with a huge crack running down the middle. The butt rock. My heart started to pound. The mouse slipped under my fingertips. "How did you do that?" "So cool," Peter said, grinning from ear to ear. I circled around it just to be sure, but it was identical to the boulder in our backyard, down to the very last pixel. I walked around it again and again until I was dizzy. It must be coincidence, right? There was no way. "What's that?" Peter asked. "What's what?" I said. "That dark thing. That's the crack in the rock." "No, the thing sticking out of the crack." He was right. There was something sticking out of the crack, small and dark, near the forest floor. I walked closer to the boulder and panned the camera down. It couldn't be, but they looked just like toes. I closed the laptop and jumped out of my seat. "No, I want to keep playing." "Please?" "This game is not appropriate." He started screaming. "You never let me play anything fun. Never, ever, ever." He got up and stomped on the door. "Let me play." "Peter, this isn't. Let me play." I slowly opened the laptop and held up my hands in surrender. Okay. I grabbed the mouse, turned the character around, and started in the opposite direction. Back up the hill, back into the ugly uniform forest. Except this time, it wasn't so uniform. The trees grew thin. The ground faded from dirt to grass. The rocks grew smaller and smaller, and the distance wasn't black anymore. There was light, golden and bright, shining through the trees. My heart sank. I pounded the W key, running closer, hoping it wasn't what I thought it was. A house came into view, a small colonial, tan with green shutters, with a fire pit onto the patio and a toy truck in the grass, all rendered into pixelated, blocky forms. I crept towards the window. Slowly shapes faded into view from behind the virtual glass. A person seated on a table next to a smaller boy, a child. "Dad?" Peter's eyes were no longer at the computer screen. "Who's that in the window?" When I looked over, I saw a dark figure stepping away from the window. "Who was that, Dad?" I don't know. I'm going to call the police, okay?" I yanked the phone out of my pocket and started to dial. Peter ran over to the computer and I followed. A message bubble had popped up in the lower right-hand corner with text in all caps. As I started to read, my heart began to pound. "Please complete game before making any calls." Or what? But I didn't have to wonder for long. The scene changed back to the bat rock. The camera pounded down to the toes, sticking out at the bottom. But now, they had bright purple polish on them. Megan? I snapped the laptop shut, and then, in a fit of madness, I threw it across the room. It hit the wall with a loud crack and then thumped to the floor. "Dad!" Peter gasped. "Don't listen to that thing," I said. Then I picked up the phone and called Megan. I heard her familiar jaunty ringtone, muffled and faded, from right outside the window. I threw open the door. Peter watched with wide eyes as I stumbled out into the yard and rummaged through the bushes. I found it under a clump of leaves and mud. In addition to my missed call, there was a new text message from a restricted number. Hands shaking, I opened it. "You broke the rules." "Dad, Dad!" Peter's voice echoed across the yard, shrill and fearful. I looked up. Multicolored light spilled out onto the porch, flashing and shifting. I ran inside. Every other computer in the house, Megan's laptop, the desktop computer in the office, even Peter's tablet, was flashing madly. Red, blue, black, white. A seizure, including blur of color. As I stepped towards the laptop, the flashing slowed. And then, the forest scene faded in. Looking just like before, now the camera was facing the bedrock, and I saw dark shape against it. The figure of a woman. Thick rope tied her body to the boulder. Her body wrinkled in jerky positions, trying to break free. She was entirely hidden in shadows, but I knew it was her. "Megan?" And then a second message popped up in the corner of the screen. "I won't kill her yet, if you follow the rules." "I don't want to play this game anymore," Peter said, burying his head in my shoulder. "Can we stop?" Before I could reply, a third message popped up. "Lead me back to your home." "No." I turned the character around, back across the stream, up the hill. Soon, the familiar golden glow came through the trees. I slowly walked up to the house again, my hand slipping against the mouse. "To the door," the message box read. I walked up to the front door, but I wasn't that scared. I mean, the door was locked. All of the bolts were in place. There was no way he could... I heard his heavy footsteps on the porch, and then something popped up in-game. A lock-picking screen, like a Skyrim. "No." "Peter," I said, picking up the laptop, "come with me." We headed upstairs, into the master bedroom. I shut the door, locked it, and put a chair against it. Then, I walked into the bathroom, set down the laptop on the toilet, and locked the door too. Holding Peter tight against me, I started to pick the lock. I heard the noise downstairs, reverberating through the house. My arm started to shake, and I held him closer against me. The door sprang open in-game. The sound of the front door opening downstairs. Peter jumped. "Who's downstairs? Is it Mom?" "No," I whispered back. "Just stay with me, okay?" On the monitor, the house looked just as we had left it. The carpeting was mapped with a pixelated, ugly texture, but even so, the color matched our rug perfectly. The two chairs still sat behind the desk. I even saw the laptop on the floor, dented and surrounded by shards of glass. "He's in the house. What do I do? What do I do?" I heard his footsteps against the tile as I walked him into the kitchen, the part of the house furthest from the master bedroom. But then, another message popped up on screen. "Lead me to you." Peter clung to me tighter. "It's going to be okay." I lied. But as I sat there on the cold bathroom tile, I got an idea. Wait, what if... I walked over to the kitchen counter. It was blocky and flat, but when I clicked on the second drawer from the right, it sprang open. I heard the clink from downstairs as I clicked on the knife. I took a deep breath. If this didn't work, we were probably dead. I turned to Peter. His eyes were wide, watching the game as he pressed his face against my shoulder. My fingers slipped against the mouse, and for a second I just stood there in the kitchen, looking at the digital counterpart of our world. Then I rolled the mouse forward, so the knife was facing the camera. Downstairs, I heard the clunk of a knife, a scream of pain, then a sickening thump. The screen flickered back, and then, with a fizzing noise from the speakers, it closed out. When we walked downstairs, there wasn't a trace of him, not even a speck of blood. So, the two of us walked into the forest, down the hill, and to the Bat Rock. We found Megan there. She was perfectly fine, but seemed to have no memory of the event. "Why am I out here by the Bat Rock?" she kept asking, making Peter giggle. We all walked up to the house, drank some hot chocolate, and went to bed. And we decided to never play video games again. Well, hello there. I'm not really good at doing this sort of stuff, so I'll try to be as clear as possible. This stuff is real, and it happened to me several months ago. I know this may sound thrilled, even cliched, but to be fair, I'm not trying to be original, and I'm not the best writer either. I just want to tell somebody, anybody. So, I hope you'll take the time to read this, and whether you decide to believe it or think I'm making this up, well, I'm fine either way. Thank you in advance. I'm doing this more as a form of therapy for myself. I need to tell this to somebody. But if I were to talk about this with my parents or even my school psychologist, they would probably believe I'm either mad or trying to pull a bad joke. So here it is. Don't expect any sequel or follow-up or even me replying to comments. I just want to tell it and perhaps be done with it. This is related to a video game, Dark Souls 3, and it has to do with the big brother of my best friend. Just as a form of precaution, I'll change the names of the people involved. So, I'll refer to my best friend as Luke and to his big brother as Jack. That should be simple enough. The less you know about the people involved, the better. This story takes place while we were at high school, most exactly last year around June. Luke has been my best friend since elementary school. I won't bore you with melodramatic details, but yeah, we're being together in all sorts of shenanigans. We know we can count on each other for any sort of thing. And if I'm honest, I hope we keep like this for many years to come. Luke's big brother, Jack, was a whole different story. The guy was 3 years older than Luke, and he suffered from chronic depression from what Luke had told me. I never interacted with the guy in person much. Silent, never looked people in the eyes. Now, my friend is no jerk. He loved his brother and tried to help him out as much as he could. But Jack's depression was a big deal for what I know. By the time we were in high school, Jack had attempted to commit suicide at least 3 times already. Yeah, it was that bad. According to Luke, the only form of happiness Jack has was video games. He would have told me Jack could spend up to 8 hours a day playing video games, and since this helped him be calm and happy, his parents didn't oppose whether that was a smart decision or not. As of recently, Jack had become obsessed with the Souls series, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 and 2, Bloodborne, all sorts of Souls-like titles, like Salt and Sanctuary, and of course, the most recent, Dark Souls 3. According to Luke, Jack has completed Dark Souls 3 not only at 100%, but he had also managed to get all the trophies reached Game Plus 7, collected every single item obtainable, and even reached the max rank of all the covenants. Same with all previous installments of the franchise. Hell, according to Luke, Jack was able to repeat word by word any video. Yes, he was that obsessed. Just for the context of what comes. Yes, I also liked Dark Souls 3. Not the biggest of fans, I was more of a Call of Duty guy. But yeah, I liked it. Of course, I was not as near as good as Jack. I sucked at the PvP, and to be fair, trying to understand the story ended up giving me headaches, but I enjoyed it regardless. Perhaps that's why Luke asked me and a couple of other friends who also play Dark Souls 3 if we wouldn't mind adding Jack as our friend on PlayStation so we would play Dark Souls 3 together. Like I said, Luke loves his brother and he was probably trying to help him since he didn't have much or any friends. This was a very noble act of him, which makes me proud to call him my best friend, so we all agreed. And that same night, we added Killer Cat 1989, Jack's PS account, to our list of friends. For the next couple of weeks and from time to time, we would join and play together Dark Souls 3 through online gameplay, teaming up to take down bosses, engaging in PvP combats, or just messing around. To say Jack was a good player would be an understatement. He was a real pro. I saw him taking on gangs of 3 all by himself like they were nothing. He had several character builds, but his favorite was one called Grave Lord Servant. Easy to recognize. With that build, he always had equipped the Dark Wraith, and as weapons he had the twin giant swords from the Ringed City. Through messages, he once told me his favorite thing to do with his build was to invade other players. He even told me he had reached the 99 limit of Pale Tongues, an item you obtain when you invade and defeat another player. According to Luke, Jack enjoyed these moments when we all played together, and to be fair, I also did. It's really sad it apparently was all for nothing. Yes, as you probably guessed already, Jack eventually killed himself. It happened just 1 month after we began playing together. Apparently, a pretty bad crisis caught him while he was alone at his house, and he cut his veins with a kitchen knife. From all our group of friends, I was the only who decided to accompany Luke at the funeral. He was devastated. Honestly, I never saw him like that, and it just breaks my heart to even remember it. He kept blaming himself. I really don't know what to say in a situation like this. On the following days, I did not saw Luke much, but it was obvious a tragedy like that affects families in several ways, and Luke just wanted to be close with his parents at the time. I don't remember the exact date, but this next thing happened a couple of weeks after the funeral. It was a weekend. Of that, I am sure, since I had no school the next day, so I decided to spend the afternoon playing video games. Perhaps Jack was on my mind, or it was just a coincidence, but I decided to put on my PS4 the Dark Souls 3 disc. I had spent every single day after that regretting that decision with all my heart. I began playing with my normal character and I went to the DLC area, the Painted World. I spent a few minutes killing enemies when suddenly the message popped up on the bottom of my screen. Invaded by the Dark Spirit, Grave Lord Servant 1989. I almost dropped the controller. I was just in shock. I immediately stopped moving the character and just stared like an idiot to the screen. But after a few seconds, I calmed myself, tried to reason it as best as I could. Perhaps it was somebody with a similar username, although I was sure I had read Grave Lord Servant 1989. Honestly, I am not sure what I was thinking. I just wanted to find a logical explanation. Since I didn't want to assume any supernatural possibility, So knowing I was leaving my character vulnerable to an attack by this invader, I decided to open my inbox and send a message to him. This is what I sent. Hello? Is anybody there? No response. After a minute or two, I returned to the game. My character was still there, intact, and there was no sign of the invader anywhere. I was too concerned over the situation, so I took my character to a cliff and jumped to my death. And as soon as I respawned, I quit the game and turned off my PS4. I needed to get the doubt out of my head, so the next thing I did was to send a message to my friend Luke through WhatsApp. This was the conversation. Hey man, are you there? Yeah, what's up? Well, I just wanted to ask you something. Did you log on PlayStation with your brother's account recently? What? I mean, did you use his account to play any game? No, I haven't logged on my brother's account. I haven't turned on at all the PlayStation. Why do you ask me this? No, never mind, sorry. It was a stupid question. I shouldn't have asked. No, it's fine. Sorry, I've overreacted a bit. I just don't feel too well just yet. Yeah, don't worry. I hope you and your folks are doing better. See you next Monday on school. Sure, see you on school. I felt awful. Not only for the fact that it wasn't Luke using Jack's account, but the fact I made my best friend feel uncomfortable with the wrong question made at the wrong time. And like an hour later, I decided to turn on the PS4 again and play Dark Souls 3, not because I wanted to play the game, but because I needed to prove myself that everything was fine and that it was just another user with a similar name. This time, I went to the big castle near the end of the long area full of enemy soldiers you have to cross before fighting the Twin Prince boss. I was there with my character, playing without really paying much attention to the game itself, when suddenly the message appeared again at the bottom of the screen. Invaded by the Dark Spirit, Grave Lord Servant, 1989. I read the title once, then twice, and then 3 times. It was the name of his character, not any form of misspell. I wasn't scared, I was angry, furious in fact, because I assumed that the real situation here was the next logical explanation. Someone had hacked Jack's account. If I ever felt true anger in my life, it was at that very moment. I immediately opened the PS box and went my wrath and frustration to whatever little 11-year-old punk was on the other side of the chat screen. Oh, you think you are so smart, don't you, asshole? Hacking and using somebody else's account? Well, I have news for you, prick. The account you just hacked belonged to the brother of my best friend, and he just passed away. I hope you feel proud about yourself, you little shithead. You can imagine how I wish that the reply I received was the one of some smartass making fun of my sexuality or making any other kind of sword joke we've seen a million times on the internet. How I wish I had decided to turn off the console and forget about it there and there. But that didn't happen. And what followed up was tormented me every single day for almost a year now. Something I can't forget no matter how much I try. Something that would probably remain with me until the very day I die. I only received one short answer. Found you. My blood became cold as I opened my eyes in terror, realizing what was going on. I immediately returned to the game and there I saw it, on top of the stairs of that 3D modeled environment, running towards my character, the red figure of a character wearing the dark wraith armor set, armed with those 2 giant swords, one on its hand. It was running towards me really fast, and I could see the name on top of the head of the character, clear as daylight. Grave Lord Servant, 1989. I panicked. I think I screamed and cried. I felt so much terror and horror like I never felt in my whole life. For a brief moment, I felt that if I managed to get to my character in game, he was going to get to me as well. I dropped the controller and immediately ran towards the TV. I grabbed the PS4 with both hands and pulled it as hard and fast as possible, disconnecting it from the power source just in time before the red phantom reached my character. I was shaking, my heart beating so fast and hard, I felt it was going to burst from my chest. All I could do afterwards was cry, like a little baby. Something had happened, something I could not explain, and it just terrified me. The very next day, I sold my Dark Souls 3 copy, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't played at all with my PS4 since then, and I don't think I ever will touch another video game in my life. You're probably thinking, this is an exaggeration on my behalf, but I just don't want to get the risk of him appearing somewhere in any other game. And so, this was my story. Perhaps you find it anticlimactic, or boring, or even bad in comparison to some of the other stuff found here. But I don't care. I just needed to tell it. Feel free to take your own conclusions. I'm still friends with Luke. He has recovered, and he and his family are moving on. I don't know what was of Jack's PS account. I never asked or told anything related to this to my friend. But if you still play Dark Souls 3, and you come across somebody named Gravelord Servant 1989, wearing the Dark Wraith armor set and armed with 2 giant swords, just turn off your game immediately. Whatever is behind this account is not natural, and you don't want it anywhere near you. Trust me, you don't. I love The Sims. Ever since I finally got my mom to let me play Sims Busting Out. Since then, I have been hooked. I love The Sims. Many of you reading this may be rolling your eyes, typical girl gamer, and bullshit like that. But why I play The Sims is not to make life families or anything. I like to build houses. It's fun. One day, I was at the local indie game shop and I came across a PS4 game. It had no cover, just a post-it note inside the sleeve. The post-it note said the game was called Sims IRL. My mind began to conjure up my crush and I being created and that bringing us closer together. The very thought made me blush. It was priced for $5. I paid for the game and left the store, hurrying home to play this hopefully wonderful game. When I got back home, I turned on my PS4 and slid the disc in. While I waited for it to download, I made myself lunch. It finished downloading and the play menu said New Game or Load Game. I obviously clicked New Game and the screen asked me to build my dream home. My dream home is the home where my crush lives, so I built his house. The entire time I was building his home, I could feel a flush creep into my cheeks. There wasn't a lot of details to the game, but the bedroom was pretty on point. The TV above the fireplace, the 4-post bed, the statues, the guitars. I moved the camera out the bedroom and to the kitchen. But what really bothered me was that I hadn't created any Sims or characters. Yet, my crush was sitting at the kitchen counter, facing out, strumming his guitar. It wasn't the same few notes over and over again either. It was an actual song. I moved the camera into the washroom when I heard a clatter in-game. I spun the camera around and saw my crush was now standing up, guitar shuddered around him as if it had been made of glass. There seemed to be a thick silence in the game. A little box where I could type text popped up on the screen, and my heart began to pound with anxiety. I typed his name, with a question mark trailing after his name. The kitchen changed in an instant, like to something out of Silent Hill, and he wasn't standing there anymore. He was hung, swaying freely above the kitchen counter. The little twisted smile gave his pale and skinny face a scary expression. I tried every button I could see if I could save him, maybe cut him down, something. It finally did, but when I saw his face, he started to weep blood. I turned off my PS4 and went to the gym. That night, I got a text from his sister as I was leaving the gym. She told me that my crush has committed suicide by hanging. He had shattered a guitar and stabbed himself in one of his eyes before hanging himself. I was at the indie game store the moment it opened to return that devil game. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you liked this video, please leave a thumbs up and a comment. Also, I wanted to thank you all for your print orders. Your support means the world to me. Take care, and I will see you all in my next video.